Titanic Talk with Nelson Aspen and Alexandra Boyd. Here we feature stories from the independent documentary Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries and everything else to do with the iconic ship. From James Cameron's epic groundbreaking movie to the history and legacy of Titanic herself. Join us and our special guests as we continue the 25th anniversary celebrations of Titanic. This is your first-class ticket to everything aboard the Ship of Dreams.
I'm Nelson Aspen. Welcome to Titanic Talk, where today I'm going to feel like a very old man as we get together. And the subject of today's Titanic Talk podcast is really, I'm really looking forward to it, as is my co-host, the delightful Alexandra Boyd, the filmmaker of Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries. If you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out. So go screen it or screen it again if you've already seen it. Alexandra, why do I feel so old today?
Because we have in our presence on our podcast two young people who are now calling themselves Titanic kids, like young people who weren't even born when I was traipsing up and down the grand staircase on James Cameron's Titanic set. Brandi Burleson and Neil Kolhatkar. Welcome to Titanic Talk. Brandi, you kick us off. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and of course, steer us away from an iceberg, but steer us in what your feelings and connections are to the ship Titanic.
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Brandi Burleson. I am 23 years old. I was born a few years after the film came out, and the first time I ever saw Titanic, I was probably 6 years old, and I was obsessed ever since I saw it. And it's actually what made me want to go into filmmaking, and that's what I do now.
6 years old, Nelson. 6 seems to be like a magic number. Like whoever was 6 when they were 6, they saw Titanic, and their life has never been the same again. What would you say, Brandi, if you can imagine your 6-year-old self sitting there? I'm imagining with a DVD player, not in a cinema, of course. And even now we don't have DVD players anymore, so that should make you feel older than
I know
people, than the millennials, than the Gen Zs. You're a Gen Z, right? Yeah. She nods very confidently. Yes. Yeah. Tell me if you can, what you think it was about that film.
I honestly do remember the first time I ever saw it, because I only remember the scene where Jack and Rose pick up the child who doesn't have his dad or his mom anywhere, and then they just get hit by that flood of water. And I just remember for some reason that I cried, like I sobbed as a 6-year-old. Like it was like so insane. And then obviously when I watched it more when I got older, I loved it. Like the lighting, the acting, the whole entire set design. It was so beautiful. And it was just insane. It
inspired you personally and professionally, which I think is really unique. Now, I have a very dear friend of mine's son was very into Titanic. And when I moved away from Los Angeles and I was sort of liquidating my Titanic collection, I gifted him some of these things. And so I initially contacted him to talk to him about, hey, we're going to do a podcast on Titanic kids. And he's kind of like, well, I'm really not that much into it anymore. But my buddy Neil, so that is how we have found Neil. Neil, tell us how old you are and how you came to Titanic.
Hi, I'm Neil. I am 15 years old, and I didn't watch the movie Titanic until I was around 10. So I first got into Titanic at around like 5 or 6.
All right, so it's the history that appealed to you.
Yes, the actual.
And
ship.
what was the defining moment?
Well, it's this book. You probably read it before, but I got this one book.
What's the title? Say the title for us.
882 and a half amazing answers to your questions about the Titanic. It's because
I have not read that.
I want to know what the half question is.
It's because that's the length of the Titanic. Yeah.
That's very
Very
clever.
interesting.
It's a young person's book.
Yeah, it's a pretty young person.
Could you answer all of those questions now, do you think, after all of your studying of the ship?
I'd probably be able to answer around 400.
Probably better than mine.
Oh
So
my gosh.
Brandi, now, so Titanic has launched, if you'll pardon the analogy, but Titanic has launched her into a profession as a result of her love for the Titanic. It's created a professional life for her. Neil, what are your professional aspirations? Do they have anything to do with ships?
When I was younger, I definitely wanted to be a ship captain or something. And I think to this day, I would definitely like to live on a boat, but it's not as ambitious as I used to be.
Okay. Have you been on a cruise yet?
I have. I went on the Norwegian Pearl a couple years back. It was a great ship.
Did you find yourself watching for icebergs?
Um, no, but I probably should have actually. We were in
Norway?
Alaska.
Were you in Norway?
No, we were in
North?
Alaska.
Oh,
Oh.
there's icebergs there, right?
As a kid, I mean, I was just into ocean liners and steamships. I mean, that was my passion, and I was an equal opportunity ship lover. And as a kid going on cruises with my folks, I always wanted the tour of the engine room and go to the bridge and all of those things. Brandi, does your love for Titanic, obviously that translates into your desire for filmmaking, but do you have any kind of nautical connection?
A little bit. I mean, I really got into the history too, and I wanted to know like a bunch about Titanic. And I think I did every single book report from like 6th grade up to like my senior year on the Titanic, just on different people, different things, and all that.
Well, it makes it
So-
easier, doesn't it? If you're passionate about something, it doesn't feel like work. Nelson and I say that all the time. We're doing these podcasts, and they're like, "How did this not feel like work?" Because we just talk about Titanic on this particular podcast. But there's some deep wisdom in that, not to deny. You know, that which you resist, you attract. So don't resist it. Just keep going for it. You know?
Exactly.
And Brandi, you watched the documentary Ship of Dreams, yes?
I did, yes.
So
I did.
was there something
So
you
good.
zeroed in that spoke to you particularly?
I mean, it was all so good, but I actually have a fascination with the baker for some reason. So getting to kind of hear about him and how he had this little look and it like made it into the film and he was so proud of that. And it was just,
and his
I just
father's
loved his-
flask, Liam's
Yes.
father's flask. Yeah.
Yes, and they framed it, and oh my gosh, I loved to see that. That really honed in because I was like, I just love the baker.
Well, one thing I tried to do, and that was quite important to me, was to show that even though there were all these supporting characters, like over 200 of us, if you take Kate and Leo and Francis and Billy and you know, Ian, Bill Paxton, all those people out of the frame, which you don't, but you know, if you look around the frame, there are all these other people, those of us who did just as much research because it was a requirement for the job, to get the job. And then once, especially somebody like Liam Toohey, who played Baker Jochen, he had a real person to study. He had a real backstory. And even though, as he says in my film, it's a shame that you didn't get to see more or all of it, he still did it. And so had James Cameron. And so, you know, we had all really immersed ourselves in the story. And I think that's one of the reasons this film comes together and is so impactful, because even though you don't see it or you don't hear it, it was all there. It was all there in the frame. And in Ship of Dreams, Titanic movie diaries, because I asked people to write down what those experiences were like, you get a real behind the scenes feel to it. Neil, have you seen the documentary as well?
I haven't watched the full thing. I haven't watched that much of it, but it looks pretty interesting for sure.
Were you a fan of the film, of James Cameron's film?
I thought it was all right.
You're a purist. You're a Titanic purist.
Yes.
he's
Come on.
I'm getting that Neil would rather watch a documentary on the Titanic
Mhm.
or even the Titanic movie than a dramatization. Is that fair to say? You're more interested in the historical.
Probably, yeah.
Is there a particular story about Titanic, about the history of Titanic that you keep going back to that was like, or do you keep discovering new things? Or is there one particular aspect, like a particular person like Thomas Andrews or Bruce Ismay or one of those people that were really there that you've been drawn to?
One of the people that I found, one of the coolest passengers of the Titanic, in my opinion, is probably Molly Brown because she's like good rich person in it. She,
A good rich person, and
yeah.
everyone else is the bad rich.
Well, in the situation where all the lifeboat, all the people were in the water, she was one of the only people who were trying to help them. Like she took a stand, and when a lot of people didn't. So yeah, that I thought that was pretty cool.
And she put up and she didn't, what's the expression, put up or shut up? So like after the tragedy, she got very involved in creating funds for survivors and to help out the families of those who didn't survive. So she was a legend, quite deservedly so.
And did she come from quite humble backgrounds too? So she
she was
straddled the idea that once upon a time she might have been a third or second class passenger, and through marriage or hard work, she had the first class ticket. So in the film too, she sort of shines a light on that world too by being more in Jack's camp than she is in.
She wasn't born to the manor. She was nouveau riche. So she came into her money late, and it's I read an interesting biography. She was a biography about her, and she was a suffragette, and she was ahead of her time. And unfortunately, or not, I mean, you may love the movie or the Broadway musical, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, but that has really, it's so bananas that it has changed the way we think of Molly Brown, that she's almost cartoonish when she was actually a very formidable.
Was she on another ship that sank that she survived? That's how she got that silly moniker?
She may have. So it's always very interesting when you read these nautical stories. I'm reading Simon Medhurst's book now, and so many of the crew members on Titanic who survived, I might add, like the officers, the shipwrecks were just a part of the job. There were people who had multiple experiences, disasters at sea. Brandi, was there someone in your mind besides the baker? Have you studied any of the stories, or is it really just from the film?
I studied them like when I did my book reports, but honestly, I can't remember any that really stuck too much out other than the baker. And then in the film, I really loved the violinists, the band,
Yeah.
because I was like, oh my goodness, yes, like them to stick together and just like know that they're probably gonna die and they can help it be a little less tragic.
And that violinist was kind of dreamy, like, let's just admit it. And
completely.
the real violinist, didn't they recovered his body with the violin strapped onto him now, and I think the violin sold for like $1 bazillion at an auction.
I'm sure.
Yes, it does.
Neil, do you collect anything? Do you have any memorabilia?
I wish, but
you need a Molly Brown in your life, and then you can go auction, get some memorabilia.
Have you been to any of the museums, Neil? Have you had a chance to do that?
Yeah, I went to this exhibition somewhere in Los Angeles. They had a piece of the ship that you could touch. I'm pretty proud of touching that one piece. So I think it was a bit off the hull.
Is it the big piece that's in Las Vegas? Was it in LA on a tour?
Maybe it was on tour.
It was no, it was actually like a very small piece.
Oh.
But they also assigned you they gave you a boarding pass when you came in, and they assigned you a passenger. I don't remember a lot about mine, but I know that he was in second class. He was from Cornwall, and he died on the ship.
How did that make you feel? Because you go through the exhibition and then you find out that at the end lived or died, survived. How did that make you feel?
It was a big bummer. I don't.
Were you moved by it? I mean, or do you have a
Yeah,
more of an analytical approach to it all?
I I think I was just kind of let down that I didn't survive.
Did you have a feeling though when you looked at the little biography on the ticket? Did you feel this person isn't first class? I'm more than likely will have sank with the ship.
No, I had a good feeling about my person, but
It didn't happen. I'm sorry.
no.
I did the same museum in Arizona, and I too was very hopeful that my second class person lived, and they did not.
Who were you, Brandy? Who did they
I, d-
assign you?
I don't remember the name. I begged my mom to take me. I was like 10, I think. And so I have no idea what the name was.
So when you're a Titanic kid, and that's what we've decided to dub you for this podcast. You're the Titanic kids. Tell me, Alexandra and I have encountered this before. Before the movie became big, it was kind of like it was like a dirty little secret. Oh, I'm a Titanic geek. I'm a Titaniac. It's kind of like this secret that you keep. We'll start with you, Brandy. What do your family and friends know about your Titanic passions, and what do they think of it?
My mom is also kind of Titaniac. Like she's not that much about it, but whenever it's on, like we sit and we watch it no matter what. We own the movie. We own like Christmas ornaments, like all those things. And she would take me to the museums when I would beg her to. And so she's very supportive. We talk about it all the time. We joke that we were probably on it in a past life. And but my other family members, they kind of brush it off. They're like not too into it, so they're like whatever. And then all my friends know that like it's literally my comfort movie. Like it's what I put on to go to bed. It's
Yeah.
what I go put on whenever I want to just watch something and chill out. Like all my friends know it, and so it's definitely not a secret.
What you mentioned off air before we started, that you have a fiance. What is
Yes,
he? What does he know what he's in for? Are you having a Titanic themed wedding?
I wish. He is not as much of a fan, but he watches it with me. He's very supportive. And he knows I do have like no memorabilia from the actual stuff or anything, but I do have like Titanic stuff. Like I have the little bears that they sell at the museum and little books and things like that. So he knows those are going on our shelves. Those are gonna be done put up. And so yeah, he's
And
supportive,
now
but he's
I want to find out more about like the wedding and the honeymoon. If there's any Titanic at all that's injected into the wedding or honeymoon plans.
I am trying to go on a cruise for the honeymoon. I really want to do a European cruise, which is a little less Titanic, but I don't know. I love cruises.
Maybe
So.
you should make the toast. You'll all hold your glasses and say, "Make it count."
Yes. Oh my gosh, I didn't think about that. You know what?
Welcome.
Just plan that.
Welcome. Have that one.
All suggestions are welcomed. Any
And what about you, Neil? What does your family think of your Titanic passion?
Um, they know that I like Titanic a lot, but I don't think any of them care about it as much as I do, if at all. If the only person that cares that likes the Titanic as much as me is Diego, my
Our
friend.
mutual
Yeah.
friend, yes. And and you've got to reignite that passion in him. He's gotten just too into his music now, and he needs to get back onto the Titanic track. But his mother, who has been my lifelong friend, she's the one. She's like, oh, you should talk to Neil. Like so if Diego's mother knew about it, like so obviously you have a bit of a reputation around Los Angeles as a Titaniac.
I guess you could say that. Yeah.
And how does it manifest itself besides the books? I mean, do you study it? Do you write book reports about it?
I did write a lot of reports on it in like first grade, and even before that. I think I have like one that I wrote when I was 5. I don't have it right now, but basically the summary is the Titanic was the biggest ship in the world, but then it wasn't. And then I said like and then I said like the Queen Mary is actually the biggest ship in the world, which it's not. It's not.
No, but you were 5, and you have permission to do that. Here, this is for all of you. Diego's mother at the time was a 3rd grade school teacher, and this was before James Cameron's film. And I went into her 3rd grade class to tell actually, that's not true. The film had come out. And I was telling the kids about Titanic, and I brought in the little lump of coal that from the wreck and all of that stuff. And as a gift, the teacher had the kids draw their own Titanic things for me, and she put it together in a book. And it was amazing that these 3rd graders were so into it. They were into the love story of Jack and Rose. They were into the sinking of the ship. They knew the breaking apart of the ship. They knew the iceberg. So what is it about Titanic, whether that's the movie or the historical event? Brandi, what is it about it that's attractive to children? It's this, in a way, it's a horror story. Why is it? It's a disaster of epic proportions. Why do children like this?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I was so fascinated with it because I feel like it's so tragic, but at the same time, it's so interesting. It's like just kind of like it's kind of like a myth that's real. Like it's so crazy. And how long it took for the actual Titanic to sink and just all of the unfortunate events that followed suit with it. But like still people survived and lived to tell the story. I don't know what it is that just it's like you have a connection with it that you can't quite explain. That's how I felt. I was like, I feel like I have this connection to Titanic that I don't know where it came from or what it is, but it's there.
Yes, we hear this
And
over and over, don't we, Nelson? Like we don't quite know. It's there. I feel this. I feel this when
Mhm.
I see the story or I think about the story. And yeah, I don't know if you know this, Nelson, but that year that Titanic won all the Oscars, there was also the sort of Nickelodeon Children's People's Choice of the best film of the year. And all of the children still
yeah,
chose Titanic as the best movie of the year back in 1998. It was,
how
1,500
will it
people
affect your
plus that.
filmmaking? Brandi, like, do you want to make films like Titanic, or did it just inspire you just to get into the business? Where are you going professionally?
Right. I mean, first it really inspired me to act. I really wanted to act. So all through high school, I acted and I was in theater and did things like that. And then I kind of realized that the other side of filmmaking, there's so many compartments to it. And what really made me fall in love with the film, still to this day, is the production design and just the set design. So I've always wanted to go into production design and help create sets and do things like that. So I'm slowly on my way to getting there. I've met a lot of great people who work in production design, work in the film industry anyway, and I think I'll make it there eventually. So
I would suspect that Titanic was a very good place to start. I can vouch for being there on that set and feeling like nothing was manufactured. It was all made specifically for the film, of course, but it was so authentic. It was
right.
so real.
And
A lot of
Alexandra,
the sets.
you often say that the experience of working on the film was your film school. That was in lieu of film school. You spent months on the set of Titanic. Neil, I had a brief moment interaction with Dr. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who discovered the wreck of the Titanic. Do you have any Titanic-related professional goals? Would something like oceanography or shipbuilding be in your future?
I have thought about becoming a marine biologist, um, which is a little less to do with the Titanic and more to do with the general ocean because I've always been fascinated with the ocean. Um, but I think I don't have any like ambitions to become a captain of a ship or something because in the unfortunate event that it does sink, I'll have to die, and that would.
We would not let your as captain, you would not go down with the ship. We would
That's
find a
still
way
a
to
thing.
get you off.
Is that still a thing, Nelson?
I
That
don't-
captain is supposed to go down with the ship? Isn't that a little sort of...
It's also there's the humiliation, I suppose. If you lose your ship, you know, you're culpable somehow. I'm sure Bruce Ismay wishes he probably wished he had gone down with the ship because he was so vilified for surviving. That's an interesting point. And the more I read histories of Titanic, there are so many different accounts about what happened to the Captain Smith. Some as we see in James Cameron's film, he's at the bridge when the water takes him. Others say that he was holding a baby, clutching a baby in the water, and others, there are all sorts of different stories. But I think in 2023, and whenever Neil does get his captain's license, there will be escape plans in place to make sure you don't go down with the ship.
Yeah, it seems to me actually it's one of those things we've talked about too, about huge failures. We learn from our failures, we learn from our mistakes. So actually, many of the crew went on to be, I know the wireless operator on the Californian that was only 10 miles away, he felt so guilt-ridden that they all went to sleep and didn't hear the SOS and all of that he became a forensic shipwreck officer. He spent the rest of his life finding out why this ship sank, and a lot of the crew, the quartermaster Hitchens, I think your experience leads you to want to help change the law more. An appropriate amount of lifeboats is now the law on all ships, and that's how you learn. But you can't carry on that information if you went down with your ship. All that experience goes with you.
Well, I think it's what's wonderful is that we can trust that the future is in good hands for Titaniacs. You guys are carrying the torch, passing the baton, whatever analogy you want to make, and I feel that way about politics. When politics gets really scary, I think, oh God, we're doomed. And then you meet young people who actually have a grip on things, and you think, oh, you know what, we're going to be all right. So you will continue to keep the Titanic legacy going for us regardless. And we thank you for taking time with us today on Titanic Talk. And you have to keep up with every single podcast of ours so that you can you figure out, maybe how it is you want to express your Titanic obsessions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. And if you'd like to hear more podcasts like this, hit the subscribe button. For information on where you can see Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, go to shipofdreamsfilm.com. Titanic Talk is a production of Ship of Dreams Film Limited. At Titanic Talk, Nelson and I are looking for the ultimate superfans. Do you have a passion for James Cameron's Titanic or any of the other screen adaptations? Are you an amateur historian with a vast knowledge of the ship herself? We would love to invite you on our podcast. Come and talk Titanic with us and all things aboard the Ship of Dreams. To reach out, email info@shipofdreamsfilm.com. We look forward to hearing from you.